Ons het dit toegelaat op 17 Maart. Moenie by die huis sit en vir jouself sê, kyk wat gebeur nie. Jy en jou familie of van jou familie het ja gestem. Jy het gesê ja. Jy moet ons kom vermoor. Ja, kom diskrimineer teen hierdie volk. Ja, dis reg.
My guest is Wessel Basson. Wessel is the leader of a small right-wing organization. I say it's a right-wing organization called Patriot 235. The 235, I think, it's a reference to a clause on the South African Constitution which allows for some, as yet undefined, form of secession or self-government, self-determination. So my question also in this discussion will deal with the ideals of the Afrikaner, secession, autonomy, self-government. And the question is that ideal still alive amongst the Afrikaner today or not? Welcome to the chat, Wessel.
Thank you very much, Johan.
Let's talk about last Friday. You had an event at the United States Embassy in Pretoria. There's been a lot of activity around the embassy. Tell me about this event that you had on Friday at the embassy.
So the idea was just to hand it over a memorandum to the US government for asking and telling them that we as the Boer nation got some rights we've got in the past, our Boer republics, which was been forcefully removed from us by the British Empire, and what we wishes is that we just get our own land back that was recognized then by a lot of countries, and we have meanwhile during the new constitution in South Africa there was Article 235 that was been written in. So in the constitutional Article 235, that's what we are all about. So I wouldn't name myself as a right winger. I just called myself as a conservative guy that is working according to what is been written into the Constitution. And Article 235 gives every nation or culture group the right to promote and do his own thing. Mm-hmm. The one thing of the act is that it was never been making a law, so it's on the books of the constitutional South Africa. It's not been saying how you're going to do it, and that is also our fight, and that was what we're going to ask the Americans to intervene and push the South African government to tell them, listen, what these people wants to do this, but you're not giving them. It's in the law books, but on the Constitution, but there is no law about how they can do it. We have asked the Americans to recognize us as a indigenous tribe in South Africa, what we are, because like Mr. Zuma and a few other leaders in Africa has called us part of Africa. So if we're part of Africa, we surely can have our own culture and own land to do our own things. And to benefit the whole of Africa. This is not for me a black and white thing. This is for me a more culture thing. This is that what we are doing the last 373 years. We are here not to fight. We are here to help people from Africa and to build the relations. But it's not been handling that as such.
Did this whole action by Trump, did it embolden white Afrikaners or white people in general to push their case, as it seems at the moment? Are you more empowered today than, say, 3 or 4 or 5 months ago?
Yes, I think there's more energy now amongst us, that we feel that at last somebody is listening to what the problems in South Africa is in South Africa, and that somebody is really listening. In a sense, it helps us a lot. It gives us more energy. it helps us to now to go open with what we are feeling, where we want to move, and so on. And then, yeah.
To what extent do you think that Trump is doing this out of some sympathy or empathy with the Afrikaner and the white man, or the Afrikaner, of course, in specific, and or to what an extent is this simply punishing South Africa because of South Africa's foreign policy?
I think that problems have started when South Africa has charged Israel at the ICU. What is it? The International
National
Court.
Criminal Court, yeah.
And I think the things have started there. This thing is, this is what, regarding us, it's just one small piece of what is going on. Yeah, and then we're sitting with the Israel Hamas situation presently.
What you're saying really is that the cause of the Afrikaner is really just part and parcel of this bigger geopolitical game that's
that's my
playing
that's my
itself out.
feeling. I think he must have some sympathizers in South Africa, and he knows what is going on here. So I think he just mobilizing people
Yeah.
that will support him in
Yeah.
this way. And I'm a true Trump fan, because not I've got a lot of issues that I don't like about him, but I think there's what he have bring to the table is for me
Yeah.
enough to say that listen, even if it's like a 10% attention to us,
Yeah.
it is more than
Yeah.
enough what we need.
You sound like you're pretty clear-headed on how this game is playing itself out. Let me ask you this question once again about the Trump executive order. How do you think black people in South Africa reacted to all of this? Or if I ask the question maybe slightly different, is would you understand that there would be quite a number of black people that would feel themselves insulted by Trump's executive order?
And the only people that is making the hoo-ahs and the noises is the Marxists and the socialists of leaders of the very far left in this country. On the ground, most black people don't know even what is going on. So most, I would say, more than 80% of black people on the ground is not very interested what is going on the politics above. It is the leaders, it is the noisemakers of the Marxists and the leftists and socialists that is making this big sounds. And they've got their groups and they try to influence, but we must realize that we're sitting in a country where poverty is very high, unemployment is very high. The day-to-day living of most people in South Africa is just to survive. They're not really interested what is Andile saying, or what is Zuma of Glope, of what is his name, Suvambu and Dlozi, of even Malema saying, and even the government is saying, and they are just worried about where's the next bread and food is coming from. So I don't think that the overwhelming population of black people know what is going on. They just feel the pains of the last 30 years of no growth, they don't see improvements. So yeah, for me, the leaders is making the hoo-ahs, and the rest is really not interested in politics. They just try to survive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the word white genocide has been used. The Trump has made it clear that according to his views, that there are being a great deal of discrimination against white people in South Africa. He then talks in specific about white Afrikaners, but I think it is about white people, the race laws, etc., etc. Let's touch on the word genocide. Do you think that there is something like a genocide going on in South Africa? Or is the use of the word genocide, can it be justified?
Now, of course, there's genocide. There's a culture genocide taking place in South Africa. We must first understand what is genocide? The meaning of genocide. And genocide is not only to kill somebody. Genocide is to 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 um, to take away a certain culture or a group and remove them from whatever they want to do. We must realize, and let me start why I'm saying this, there's a genocide happening in South Africa. After the post 94 elections, the ANC has started to change most white towns in South Africa, streets, buildings, uh, airports. They removed statues.
Yeah.
They've done so a lot. They've even starting with uh, uh, like a two-way system of schools where the school is fully Afrikaans. Then they've started and said, no, 50% must be English now. And we know what is happening with the word 50+1. We know, I think most people with a relative knowledge of what is going on in the world will know what the 50 and 1 means. That means you can do nothing. And when there's a 50 and 1, it's removed, that it's taking over, and people take their children away, and then it's completely, let's say, English. And it's nothing against the English culture. It is just like what we are feeling, what is happening. We must. So they have done a lot to remove um, culture, and we know that history. You can have a lot of places in Europe and so on, but you can't wipe out history, good or bad. This is part of any country that people can learn out of the faults of the past and so on. But what they try to do is they have not created or built or funded these things. They have just removed the names to this to get rid of the Afrikaner pioneers that have built this country, to wipe out those who have done good for this country. And we can later talk about what from the overseas side they're calling so-called apartheid, but we'll come later to back. For me, it's attacking of my culture. It's attacking on our language, our heritage, our culture, and even now on our ground and property rights in South Africa. Now, I don't care who said what. As soon as you start that, and by that saying, Johan, is that when a government or the courts in a country is allowing politicians to stand on podiums and called for the death of a certain group or race,
Yeah.
that is for me promoting. That is hate. It's not only hate speech. That is promoting hatred and division for what is happening. And we know about the farm murders. We know that more than 2,500 farmers have already been murdered in South Africa. And people say, yeah, but that is just a normal crime. Now, show me one country in this world. Now, show me one country, even in Europe. Show me a country where farmers have been killed in this way and it's been allowed. Not even in Russia. We know that Stalin has done that in the past, but in the free world after the Second World War, show me one country where farmers have been targeting by a system that was happening in South Africa.
Vessel, to make it just very clear for anybody who's listening to this right now, what you're saying is that when we use the word genocide, we should not uh, um, think only about death and destruction, killing people, murdering people. We should think in terms of the cultural genocide that's taking place.
Yeah.
For that matter, for example, I would imagine the Bella Law that will
Yes.
attempt to, if I understand it correctly, take Afrikaans out of schools. And that's part of the genocide that you're talking about. The genocide that you're talking about is the destruction of a cultural group. That's the genocide that
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yeah. You don't have to physically murder somebody. You're killing a whole culture, nation, of tribe. And that is how I seeing it. If that is debatable for everybody,
Just
but
to make
I
it even
will
more
I will
clear, Vessel, sorry to interrupt you, but just to make it more
mm,
clear, I know that they've changed the school curriculum and the subject history in South Africa as well, that kids are not taught anymore the history that I grew up with and you might have grown up with. But
yes.
um, that's also, I would imagine, part of what you would define as genocide, removing, for example, in particular, the history of the Afrikaner.
Yeah. No, what that is what's happening here.
Hmm.
Just take you one. I don't know if most people know overseas what the quota system is. We've got 142 acts that has been written against white people in South Africa to benefit to how they said um
To undo
to
the
benefit
injustices
now
of the past
the
is,
injustice of the so-called past and so on.
yeah.
And now, after 32 years, they still have got there's 300 bylaws, regulations to submit to that 142. But just to take a simple example of a quota system, that white children that is doing very well in school and wants to become doctors in this country can't become, they must be chosen through there's a quota system that even if your grades are like 98%, you can't become a doctor in South Africa if you're not falling into that 3 or 4 5% where they allowed you to go and study for a doctor and so. This is to help people in South Africa. How we understand this this whole thing is that how can you prevent people to help other people and then they come and they lie about it and say no, this is not happening in South Africa, but that is what's happening. So that what's happening at this stage, they've been caught for lying for 32 years in this country. That is what's happening now. They try to, they want people's money from overseas. They want the taxpayers of Europe and from America and whoever else. They want their money to so-called help people inside. But meanwhile, they're using that to create a monster further. And yeah, so for that side, I'm very proud to and thank Mr. Trump what he's doing actually now, because who wants to spend his money in a country where that same money is being used for other purposes and for funding other types of projects that is like barbaric and help terrorism organizations and so on. But yeah, so that is just my feeling. But as I say, genocide, there's no doubt for me that a genocide is taking place in this country. Um, and it's killing my culture, it's killing my whole heritage, it's killing my whole language, it's killing for land I want. That is also talk for later, but people don't know the real story, what's going on here. And I think people must start to wake up what is actually happening in South Africa. And that this so-called ANC, let's be honest, Johan, the world was hoo when Nelson Mandela get out of jail, and they they've got the guy that they think he was the so-called messiah of black people in South Africa, and the world think everything is going to be happening, going to go good from now on. But after him, what happened after Mandela? Why they lose so suddenly interest in South Africa is because for me, Nelson Mandela was like a peon to certain groups over in the world to use them, and they've built statues all over the world for him, and there was money flowing in. But actually, the leaders behind that, Lutuli House, was not doing the same what Mandela was preaching for a country that was free and no hatred and so on. So there's what legacy people think Mandela's got is not happening we can see that. So for me, it's like hypocrites, man, all over.
The problems are clear, but the solution seems to me something that we need to focus on. People around here in Europe are quite aware of the fact that the Rainbow Nation is not the Rainbow Nation that they dreamt about or that they celebrated back in the 90s. So I think a lot of people in the world are aware of what's going on in South Africa. The question, though, is what do we do with this? How does the future look like? And that's where I'd like to put the emphasis on the discussion for now. Um, Let me start off with this question from your point of view. And I started my discussion when we met. I told you that back in the 90s, I was here in Europe when South Africa became a democracy, and I was one of those people that obviously danced in the streets, believing that the great freedom has arrived and that the event of the democratic South Africa was something to be celebrated around the world. I thoroughly believed that. Um, we are now 30 years later. From your point of view, and also from how many people in South Africa's point of view, uh, can one say today that the rainbow dream has been shattered, that it is destroyed?
We say to people that are still believing in it as you in La La Land. Yeah, there's definitely you must be in La La Land to think that it's going to work. The
Mm-hmm.
division and is too big in this country, and I don't think we can look into matters of ways of things that was happening in the past. Why this is happening, but I think you will recall the Human Rights Commission um, in the 90s, and Desmond Tutu was the head of
Yeah.
the Truth and Reconciliation um, thing in the 90s, and unfortunately, war is war, and so for me, the Truth and Reconciliation has failed the total of South Africa, black and white, in a big way that leaders wasn't charged for doing, wasn't being taking accountable for what I was promoting.
I really look from afar, and I have sort of the impression that we've reached a kind of a crossroad in South Africa. And if we go back to the fundamental questions, for me, it would be the question I just asked is the creation of a multicultural, multiracial democracy, has that worked or has that failed? That's part of the, I think, one of the most important questions that we need to ask ourselves. And then what in its place if we say it has failed? So let me start here. Do we agree with one another that apartheid as a system was not a sustainable system, and for that matter, was not a good system?
Listen, not everything of apartheid was bad. What, not let's just take away, Johan. What is happening? When did this word apartheid have started?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the guys that is actually promoting this word apartheid and was fully driven it right through the world? And let me, and we start by that. After the Anglo-Boer War between the Boers and the British, we know that there was an interim of 48 years where most English, we were still a domain of England.
Mm-hmm.
We were a union. And after 1948, the Nationalist Party has won. And starting with a few with laws and so on. But some of those laws is just like what the English have started. Remember, the English crown was running this country not until 1948. It was run until 1966, until we have become a republic.
Mm-hmm.
Until 1966, we were still a domain of British. We would have been to the crown of the day I have heard no one in this world say thank you to Dr. Verwoerd that was taking that step, that important step, is to make this country a republic
Yeah.
and taking us away from the British crown that was dominate and actually running South Africa out of the British crown. So we can say apartheid is bad, but we mustn't forget the big part of what the British guys have done to this country. We
Yeah.
must understand why these things have happened and why the Afrikaner is creating a system to protect themselves from again from certain things because the British crown has demolished us. They have killed our women and children in concentration camps. They have sent our fathers away to Ceylon and those places. We mustn't forget that. We mustn't forget where this thing has started. And we can't say that everything was bad. We've got a system. If you go to Britain now, 4 out of 10 people are against multiculturalism.
Yeah, yeah. Let me just make this clear to you, Wessel. I am not saying anything to judge apartheid as good or bad or evil or not evil. That's not what I'm doing. I am merely saying that the system did not work. It did not deliver the results that satisfied the development of the whole of South Africa. So that's all I'm saying. Whether apartheid was a good thing or a bad thing, or whether we should in fact even revisit some of the ideas of apartheid, like when you talk about all the different cultural groups in South Africa, in terms of a system that we got to build to actually accommodate and protect at the same time all the different cultural groups in South Africa, whether the homeland system might eventually become a new alternative for the new South Africa. So I'm not standing in judgment of any system. I'm merely saying it was rejected by the world. It was rejected by the majority of South Africans. It failed at the end of the day. And in its place, we have to put something. We have to build something. So I go back to exactly the same question I've asked. The multicultural, multiracial democracy that was created in 1994, the foundations of that seems to be shaken at this state. Now, there are many people. I had dinner the other night with a group of South African journalists here who would say to me, "But we are quite happy. Our lived experience is positive, and we want to continue in this multicultural democracy of South Africa." And I'm asking you today, if we don't accept the multicultural South Africa today, what do we build in its place?
Confederal state.
And how does that confederal
where
state look
where
like?
communities where communities been built by the culture. We must remember that this country there's no such thing as just black people and just white people because even white people in this country come out of different backgrounds, or English or Portuguese or Greek or you that you or you're an Afrikaner and what we call ourselves Boers. So there's also like a divisions inside the race card or whatever if you want to play. But we've got like how many African tribes? Uh, yes, there's like 65 million black people. But of those 65 million black people, if you're dividing through the different cultures, they're also like 4.5, 6.5 million people. So for me, a confederal system where uh, tribes are being allowed to govern them according themselves, according to their cultures and so on. It doesn't mean that we can have a bigger picture and work on a lot of things together and so on. That's a system can work out, but um, we must have a system where everybody is being respected, even if you're a minority group, like the Bushman. Let's take the Bushman. Before the white man or the Zulus or the Xhosas and other tribes have arrived here, this country was mostly like the people from the Khoisan. They were here when we came here. most of these African tribes was coming from the north. So that is why I said South Africa's got a complex history and a complex diversity that is not. We have tried now the 32 years of multiculturalism, and it surely doesn't work because, as I've mentioned, there's a lot of several reasons why people can't sit around the same fire, because there is just too much division regarding them, and everybody's got a right to have his own culture and group to protect for. And for me, simply a confederal system in a canton way, where we've got the system where you've got more accountability to communities than to a government of a central government where one guy can make or break anyone in South Africa.
It seems to me there's a choice. You either have a melting pot where you put all these people together in one unit, which is what is essentially the new South Africa, the melting pot, the multiracial, multicultural ideal, or you break that up. Those are fundamentally, I think, the two questions. Now, what I hear from you and what I hear from other people that I've spoken to the last week or 2 weeks is that this melting pot thing is not working. And although, and I want to stress again, I sat around the table 2 or 3 weeks ago with a group of white South African journalists who told me that their lived experience, they all city-based people, was that we believe in this melting pot. We believe in this multicultural ideal. So I'm trying to figure out for myself, is your way of thinking, is that just perhaps reality-based, that you cannot simply put all these different cultural groups together? It is unworkable and it will simply never work. Or do I listen to those who say to me, no, we have to push ahead with the idea of the multicultural ideal? That's the most fundamental question, I think, at this point of the discussion, because it beyond that question, it really is a matter of, okay, how do you do it? How do you create that? And part of my discussion then with you would be, you talk about people of their different ethnic identities. Black people, do they feel the way you feel? Does the Zulu man?
Surely, but surely the black people are already in a system of tribal things. They've got their kings or their princes or their chief leaders and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You must remember, we've got a system that where traditional leaders are being paid by this government, and the only race that is excluded is white people.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you're talking about a multicultural system, but you don't you're not contribute. You don't bring the one section that is the fight all about is the white people. Why are the white people not involved in the traditional leadership? Why are they excluded from that?
Yeah.
If they talk about, if even this white journalist or friends of yours, and I can take a very good example, Johan Rupert and Johan Ackerman and all those things, people that's got money. We must realize that the problem in South Africa, which I see, is not. I'm not base my things on race. I base it on the gap between poor and rich is too big in this country. Even the rich black people in this country are staying in areas now and not in the townships. Why? Because the classism is too big. They exclude now their own people from to living in a area where you've been fully been protected and got cameras and you've got safety and you've got all those things. So there's a lot of things we can look into it, but I'm fighting for a poor Afrikaner, the workers class, and the middle class white people that is being simply denied to work and have the opportunity to work as an ordinary guy in this country, and it is being excluded, and that is why we want to choose this route and so on, and as our forefathers have done it, Boer republics, We were independent and recognized in the past, and we want that rights back. We're not here to fight black people. That is the main thing that people the whole time is hammering on is, yeah, now you're creating again apartheid state. This is not apartheid state. This is a state where we where every tribe has the right to have govern his own people.
I hear what you
And
say. What you're really saying is that the rich have the privilege to actually live integrated as they wish because they are separate from the rest of the bunch anyway. We talk about
yes,
just ordinary people, and we're confronted with a different reality. Let's call a spade a spade. Okay,
yes,
let's call it what it is. Um, I've asked this question also to several people that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks. This whole melting pot thing, this whole multicultural thing. Many people say to me on the right spectrum, and then I cannot help but define it as the right spectrum, and also just for clarity's sake, that all of that is just an illusion. That the new South Africa, in fact, is also just an illusion. That there is no really mixing crossing over of boundaries. Afrikaners are with Afrikaners, Xhosa people are with Xhosa people. People choose by themselves to actually separate themselves from other groups. So I say, let's call a spade, then let's call a spade a spade. Are you saying to me that it is an impossibility for the different ethnic groups of their very diverse, their very different cultures, their very different worldviews for that matter, that are really very far apart from one another in terms of their own natural character, that it is impossible to bring them together in this soup of the new South Africa?
Johan, I'm going to start first. I've actually the other day I have a conversation with a guy. I will answer you now. I've told him, let's say, for instance, after 1994, the ANC has come to the Afrikaner community and said, listen, let's sit around the table. You've got resources, you've got people that is got the knowledge. We're not going to implement it 142 laws against you. What we want you is to help us to build
Mm-hmm.
a country where you are involved, and we will use your expertise and your knowledge. And we want you to help us to get upcoming farmers. We've got a lot of land as government. How we can create a system where young upcoming black farmers and other cultures is coming in. We've got the land without taking anyone's land, and wherever there's land that is not being used, we can do some. We will buy the land, and but with partnerships to create a system where um, we built up the country to help growth and all those things. We as government is not going to taking away the commando system that is protecting farmers on the rural areas. We're not going to implement any negative racial laws against you. We're going to working according to what we have done. I think that the Freedom Charter in the 1950s, if I'm right, that they've been right. We want to build this land. We want to build it with you, and we're going to create a culture of partnership where everybody's important. You will have your language. You can still learn any degree in Afrikaans. We're not going to take universities away from you. We're not going to take schools away from you. So what I'm trying to say, if the ANC has come from their side and promoted a positive attitude and not changing everything, I'm telling you, after 32 years, if we had that culture, even if I'm the hardest of boers of everything, I'm telling you, most of white people would have voted for the ANC. But they have started of a system of hatred and of a tit for tat. You have done this in the past to us. Now we're going to do the same to you. To answer your no. After 32 years, they have itself killed the multiculturalism for themselves. They have killed the dreams they've seen to create this land of what they call it a rainbow country and a rainbow nation. they have actually destroyed itself. They've destroyed the rainbow themselves. Not the Afrikaner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the Boer.
Yeah. Yeah. What I hear,
Not other countries.
yeah.
Not other tribes.
Yeah.
They have killed themselves, not us.
Yeah, yeah. What I hear from you, I've heard from many other people that have also said to me, if only the African National Congress had actually made use of the goodwill that exists amongst white Afrikaners, that there is a goodwill to bolt together. And I guess that the payback that you want to have with that is the right to actually speak your own language, the right to maintain your own culture, the right to maintain your own identity. I think that would be the payoff. My question though is where we are now, uh, how do we realize a system that is sufficiently separate but together, for lack of a better description? Um, One of the things in my head is why has nothing in the last 30 years happened to Article 235? Why has that not been asserted or been worked on?
Because the ANC has abandoned their own word. They were part of we call it a court, which they have signed, and General Viljoen, and I think there were some few role players overseas that was part of that accord, that that the system were being created to go that route, but it was abolished by the ANC leadership. I think when I see they were fully in control, they were simply just um, stepping down and said, "You're not going to get it." And we can hear the whole story of speeches. You want to go? Let's take Oranje for instance. This is now apartheid town in South Africa. Even if that community has asked no money from government, fully invested by its own people, fully being built by its own people, uh, labor anything, and now it is a apartheid state because a community just wants to do their own thing. They have used their own money, not even Andile or Malema or whatever's money. They've used their own money to build something. Now people connecting that to the monster word apartheid. Now, what is apartheid? Just because I don't want, I'm not going to even be allowed there if I'm not qualified to stay there. That is in their good right to choose who they want there. If I'm not falling into the criteria of going there, they will not allow me.
But that's a private community, though. I mean, that's a community that's
so why
privately owned, and
why
it can make its own laws, I guess. It can make its own rules, like I guess in a private club, who they allow or who they do not allow. But that's a private piece of land, and I think that one should respect that, and I think they have the right to maintain that. My question is just how do you undo what we've got now, this mishmash, this pot of different cultures that are all so intermeshed and integrated? How do you create new components that can rule itself or have more right or autonomy on their specific part of culture or land? If you don't do it in geographical terms, this is your piece of ground and that's my piece of ground. How do you do that?
Listen, I think you're going to have the next few years very unstable waters in South Africa, but the only way we can save this whole country in a whole, and to that everybody's benefit inside this the boundaries of South Africa is to sit around the table where politicians is not dominating the negotiations. We must go and sit around the table, black, white, Indian, colored, all those people must sit around the table, and we must tell each other and say, listen, this is things that was not working, is not working. This is why we feeling we must have our own lands and so on. and why you don't want it. We don't talk about it. We need to sit around the table and get a facilitator where is open-minded and understand each group, and not understanding a white-black thing, but understanding tribal culture feelings, to understand how the Afrikaner of the Boer is feeling, how they looking out of their perspective of how things must be fixed and so on. I think this country can be safe. I think this country can be still be the bread basket of Africa. I think we can still be the example from how we can fix things. But with a government and politicians that is fully focused on race and hatred and greediness, corruption, all those things. We must do we must sort it out without them, because they are actually the problem. And I think there's enough people that is still got a good heart. I know a lot of farmers in the conservative ranks, and they treating their people very well. And I promise you, I don't think the hatred is like been making out what the politicians are saying. The hatred is up there where I've told you the money is. But when it comes to the normal guys on the ground, they are the ones that must also decide it. And I think we've got also like a 10, 12 million people that is not voting. Why? It's almost starting to getting the bigger side of that people in protest. They don't want to vote because they know it's going to happen. The same old stories is happening. Communities are sitting and facing the same problems. They're facing crime. They're facing a lot of unemployment. They're facing a lot of lack of knowledge, no growth in their local economies. And wherever the government is involved, they just enforce their will and their policies. Why is that most black land that was been through the land policies and handed over to black people, where there's no cart and transport, where there's no papers for that, it's still the government's property? Why is that? Why don't this government want Peter Masola to own land, and that is at the office where you registered it on your name? Why is that? Why is that even black people can't have ownership of that certain grounds on even houses here, the RDP houses? Why is that everything has been controlled by a government and there's no title deeds for that? Why is that? Simply because they are fully Marxist socialist policy. Because they want to do that one thing they always want to do, and that is to nationalize everything in South Africa. And that is you want your answer why this country is not working. Nationalization, slowly nationalization of everything, where everybody's being controlled. And that is why you have stubbornness of people like me, is we're not going to sit still and see how a Marxist system is taking our land, and for those things that my forefathers have working with blood and sweat. So we're not going to hand it over like peacefully they want it.
We are way out of time. Just for my own clarity, for me try to understand and to get an image of what is going on and what are people's dreams and desires. What is it that they see as a solution? Let me just get back to this, and maybe I've asked this about 10 times to you now. Are you fighting, as you are with your organization, Patriot 235? Are you fighting for a piece of land that you say, this is the border of this piece of land and this is my piece of land? Is that the ultimate, what you're fighting for? Or are you saying it's a complex situation and we're going to have to bring power from the central government more down to local government, and somewhere in that we will find the solution?
Let me listen. I can't talk for other groups, but what I'm seeing is that a canton system, that you can have an Afrikaner community in the far north, and you can have a community in the Cape or Natal and you've got the one mother body that is helping to see that everything is helping. So that means next to me can be a colored or black canton also. It doesn't mean we've got, yes, there will be a borders, but it doesn't mean there will be no workmanship with them or like free trade or so. It's that is not the idea. The idea is that communities are being protected in a certain areas where they can live their culture and live out the language and train send the children to school in their own languages. Why is it? And I don't think people overseas know that, but if you take other languages, indigenous languages in South Africa, why are they not fighting like us for their languages? You know, for me, it's very sorrow. I'm saying it's very sorrow when you hear black people speaking in English and not in their own language.
Yeah.
And that is a sorrow part because then they're killing their own culture, their own heritage. It's something that is part of them. My English is not as good as what I want it to be, but my first language is Afrikaans.
Yeah.
But meaning by that, we can have languages to communicate, but when it comes to your mother language and to teach children, it must be done in a mother language where you can understand what is the physical meaning of certain things. Because how I put myself in Afrikaans is not going to sound the same in English.
Yeah.
You know yourself as Afrikaans speaking guy that we've got a language that you can understand. You can have 5 words with the same meaning.
Yeah.
Complex, but the only thing is we must sit around the tables, we must work it out, and we must work it out very soon. I don't like the winds of what I'm hearing. I don't want a situation coming to South Africa where we fall into a civil war because of leaders that was not doing enough to prevent it. If we want to talk, and we must talk about it, we must sit around the table and we must discuss it and say, listen, okay, now we've got the facilitator, and that guy can say, listen, guys, I understand how these people is arguing. Let's make changes to the constitution or to a certain ranks where communities feel more secure, more protected, and at the end of the day, we all want to build South Africa. We all love this land where we are staying is, but no one is giving something up for that. And sometimes you must.
What about this? This is going to be my last question. I sorry to interrupt you again. I hear what you say, and I think your message is very clear. What about if we have a true democracy in South Africa? In other words, we don't have those 144 race-based laws. What about if the country can emancipate itself from the new form of apartheid via these laws and systems that have been created, the quota system and all of this sort of stuff that is standing in your way to actually live and carry on with your life and to be a happy citizen who can partake in the broader South Africa? So there are 2 things perhaps that I should add to that. What if we remove all of these race-based laws and we can genuinely just live under the law of the land that does not discriminate against anybody? Is that not truly, at the end of the day, perhaps the answer? Because what I don't see, and I can't see it, and I don't know how it will ever happen, is how do you undo the meshing, the integration that has been established throughout the last 200-300 years? We are so tightly integrated on so many levels, also spatially for that matter, more and more so. So what about if we just really create a true democracy?
Well, a true democracy can also be in a confederal system.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Europe's definition of democracy and the Americans' definition of democracy isn't necessarily Africans' definition of democracy. Uh, I don't like the word democracy. Um, it is the word can be very vague of how you see it. But for me, it is still a dream. What most people have wanted before '94, what you tried to, that was the ideal thing, and it didn't happen. You sit now with a nation of a full South African system where education people are more uneducated than ever before. We're sitting with a system where unemployment is the highest in the world, almost. We're sitting with crime that is almost the highest in the world. The ideal, yes, for those who believe it. I don't see it. I think every culture group must fix in first self, sorting out in a civilized way, that way culture is ruling themselves, and make sure that um, everybody sticks to the rule of humanity, and still treat each other with respect. And I think that's the one thing I want to see, is that people come back to a base where people have been respecting each other in another way. But to answer you, I don't think there's a solution for everything. For me, the solution is straightforward: a system where communities rule them, where the power is not above us, and the power must be on the ground with people, and and everybody must benefit from the resources of the land in South Africa, mines, everything, and it must be uh, equally shared to all groups in South Africa, and not exclusion. As long as you exclude people, and exclude people by equity or affirmative action or racial laws, uh, this is just a dream that will never take place. And I can't see that this is going to change on. That's the end of my story.
Yeah.
Sorry to say that, but
I
as
know. I
long as the
absolutely.
ANC.
Yeah, I respect what you say. I really do. What I will say, though, and this is why I'm sort of hammering on it the whole time, is that you and I also begin to start talking in the same kind of language that you hear from other organizations. It becomes vague, it becomes muddy, because there's no clarity really at the end of the day of what the solution is. And I go back to what I said earlier on the discussion. It's a choice that we all have to make: is do we want to live in this melting pot? And is it possible to live within that melting pot with people of such diverse cultures, such diverse even belief systems for that matter, on whatever level you want to measure that the differences between two people? So is it überhaupt possible to live within this melting pot? Or do you have to go to a system where you say, well, you know what, this is my piece of land and I rule myself in my piece of land? Everything in between that seems to me becomes gray and mushy and not something that I'm able to define. And then I would imagine, and maybe I'm being very base about this and I'm not smart enough to puzzle it out myself, it seems to me one then suggests to go back to what I then will call a homeland system, a homeland for everybody, a homeland for the Xhosa, a homeland for the Zulu, a homeland for the Afrikaner. And of course, the question on top of that would be, but how on God's earth do you ever create that in South Africa?
For me, I think, like I said the whole time, a confederal system where nations are ruling themselves, but it doesn't mean that there can be a system where you can have still one defense force, where you still have to defend the sea boundaries or whatever. There's a lot of things you can still work together to create a system where everybody is safe inside that canton systems of confederal states.
Yeah.
The thing is, we must work it out, and how we're going to do it, and only us ourselves can create that system.
Thabo Mbeki apparently once made the statement, you show me the animal and we will be ready to talk. That's more or less, I'm putting it in my own words now, but it was, in fact, a fairly open statement from the then president of South Africa is, okay, show me this thing that you want to have. Show me the numbers of the people. Show me the beast. Show me the animal, and we can talk about that. Nothing has happened.
Let me start here. There was in the 99, just before the 94 election, Thabo Mbeki was one of the undersigning persons of this accord.
Yeah.
And in that signing of that accord, it stipulated if you have a substantial proof that people want to go in that route, we will look into it. And the 1994 elections, I think there was like almost close to 700,000 people, not but close enough to say that is what we have done. And part of that accord things and before the negotiations was that a Volksstaatsraad council will be created, which they did, but was never maintained or survived and just went down. So the Freedom Front is part of the problem. The Freedom Front is part of a system where they have actually demolished or waiting too long to implemented certain things of Article 235. I've got a very severe meeting last year, February, where most of the leaders of the Freedom Front was involved. And I've asked Corneille Mulder, who have, he makes the statement, he was the guy that was implementing the 235 in the constitutional. So I asked him, why didn't he fight or do more to bring the right, the laws of 235 and all those things? And his word to me was, the time is not right. So I don't know when the time is right. So when it comes to the Freedom Front, and I don't think they have done their part, which we put our trust in them as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And now it seems they were just like what we call rhinos of the day, where they were just talking and just to get this thing away as soon as possible, and they were actually doing from their part not enough. After 33 years, purely as a member of parliament and a long-living parliament guy now, Corneille Mulder, he should have done more, and I'm going to stick to it. He's now the leader of the Freedom Front, but what the mandate was being given to him in 94, he didn't carry out after that. So whatever the Freedom Front is saying is just to protect them, what we accuse them of, and that was, they have done nothing about it. They, as leaders, they have pushed us actually further into the depth and the darkness of this country. They should have done more, and instead of doing more, they are creating themselves as politicians, professional politicians, and now that things are at the end, they come up with stories. So now, whatever the Freedom Front is telling you, I will suck it out of my thumb. They are actually the biggest problem of the last 32 years in my culture's politics, and people that were supposed to fight for me and they have done nothing. And that is where I am today, and where a lot of other groups are. We feel like we have been stabbed in the back by people that didn't look after us, and they have actually allowed. Remember, the Freedom Front and the DA is political parties that was just few months before this last election was saying we will never work with the ANC, never. And now they are part of the government of national unity. Now, it seems something has happened between that time and that And it's all about, yeah, I can understand the politics behind things. It's just we've got now a foot into the door of at least they acknowledge us and so on. But that is not enough for us. That is not a in that period that they are part of the national government of national unity. Johan, two laws who have been signing. The one is the Bellawet and the other one is the Expropriation Act.
Yeah.
So they are part of things that is they was the whole time telling us they are fighting against. No man. So what I will touch anything else what I hear from the Freedom Front. I think the Freedom Front is gonna be going down in the future. That means they will be absorbed by the DA, and the DA will be in a way also absorbed in the ANC in the future. We need a political party. You must remember, I just want to correct you, in the beginning you said right wing, any party. Remember, 235 is for any group in South Africa that seeks culture independence, not only white. Anybody. And that's why I'm talking to the colored people, and we have talked in the past also with black people. There are a lot of other groups that is also want the same route. And how we gonna find each other? That's a question of another day. But we're definitely not in fighting with each other. We've got the same ideas. But 235 is been written that all culture groups, it doesn't matter who you are, can have the same opportunity to become free. Not only this is not a white thing. This is a culture thing. This is a thing for any group in South Africa that seeks self-determination.
Yeah. Wessel, just before I let you go, I will be talking to Arends Roots in the next 2 days. He's just created his pioneer movement. A question, and what's your message to Arends Roots? And if you can add on that, is what do you think Arends Roots can put on the table that has not been put on the table by AfriForum or by Solidarity or any other grouping in South Africa? What can he bring to the table, and what's your message to him?
Arends Roots is got. I think we are very close. What we are thinking about. I think we've got more points that we can agree on that we can disagree, and then that is the problem also in South Africa. We must look rather at the points that we agree on and not disagree on to take this country forward, or whatever culture groups. And I think Arends has made it also very clear that he thinks culture groups must rule themselves, as I understand it, if I understand it right what you have said. But Arends Roots, I think, is definitely he's definitely an open-minded guy that I think he's going to bring very further from
positive
what we are
contribution.
now. He's got the right friends and the right connections in the right places that were starting to listen, and he's going to get more relevant to me the next few years, maybe, or he's already relevant, but he definitely shows me that the way, I don't know what was happening, why you went away from AfriForum, but what I can understand is, and I can see a guy that has actually got now more freedom and talk about what he's feeling, where AfriForum should have gone in the past. I'm not sitting around the same tables around AfriForum of Solidarity because of several reasons. I think they are like just political correct, and they want to swing the narrative if it's their wishes and so on. But not saying that they're bad people or they've done things wrong. I'm not a fan of them. But what everybody's doing, even if it's a small percentage, they bring a debate to the table. And I think to close down, it doesn't matter who brings the debate to the table. Everybody realized that South Africa is in big trouble. And at at last, I think people are starting to talk about, even if it's like a negative side from the left. I think it's creating now an open platform, Johan, that people can maybe realize that at some point people must start to talk to each other and work it out how we're going to deal with this problem. Remember, I've never said that my group is going to be the alpha and omega. But as long as we being treated like second-hand citizens and treated like trash, we will fight the same fight as other groups. And but yeah, Aaron's route for me, I would have chosen him as the ambassador to America, if I may say. He's like he's got it. You must have a guy that is open-minded and got a lot of knowledge and understandable of a lot of things. And I think he's got the potential to become maybe one of the great leaders in future. The one thing that I think a lack was the last 32 years in South Africa is upcoming new good leaders in all culture groups that is open-minded. And Aaron Roots is for me one of those guys that I think has got the potential to be a great man one day.
Mr. Basson, thank you very much for this discussion.